Elementary students in Columbia Public Schools are heading back to the classroom for the first time since March. Right now, we are joined by Superintendent Dr. Peter Stiepelman to talk about that transition as the return to learn pushes on. Thank you so much for being on with us this morning, Dr. Stiepelman.
Good morning to you.
So today is obviously a big day with those elementary students heading back to the classroom. What are some of the main things you want parents and students to know this morning?
Well, there are a number of things. I mean, first of all, we're still in a global pandemic. We still have our local data that we review, and it's important to note that there are a number of things that we should still be really paying attention to. So, for example, every morning you should be working with your child just to do a quick morning routine. So make sure no fevers or chills, make sure no coughs, make sure no shortness of breath, make sure taste and smell are intact, no headaches, all those types of things that you would do normally as a parent, but truly trying to be vigilant about that as we enter school. And then I'd want parents to know that we are prepared, that we're prepared with masks and cleaning supplies and all of those types of things. In fact, we've had 30,000 disposable masks ready. We have 6,500 cloth masks, 1,500 face shields for our teachers, 1,200 clear masks for deaf and hard of hearing students, 3,000 8-ounce bottles for disinfectant, and we've taken in a number of donations from the state and from our local community as well. And then lastly, I would remind our families as they're commuting to work that there are going to be an increased number of buses and children walking to school, and just to be very careful about their morning routine. Our children are out there.
Yeah, definitely. And now the 14-day case rate for CPS has actually increased over the past week, though it hasn't hit 50, which does indicate possibly a switch to virtual learning. It is just over 10 away right now. Does that concern the district with the elementary students returning to in-person learning today?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It concerns us. One of the things I've been receiving a few emails over the weekend, and I will get back to them this week, about whether or not that tool is still in existence, and it is. One of the things that we have to also consider is when we adopted it in early August, we were using it as a full district-wide tool, and we are. But it also is one of the indicators that we use to make decisions. And so as we are able to now, because of the health department and the state health department, able to give us information by age so that we can actually break it down by elementary, middle school, and high school. Middle school and high school are those areas that are really trending up, particularly middle school. But elementary school, as I've been talking with the health department, still looks good and still looks stable. So we will continue to look at it, but it's just one of the tools that we'll be using to make sure that we're making good and well-informed and evidence-based decisions.
All right, thank you so much. And we also have heard some dismay from families with middle and high schoolers that they are left out of that in-person learning with possible protests planned for today. Do you have any plans to keep protests on school grounds COVID-19 safe? And will you respond to any of the protests to discuss the concerns with the community?
Yeah, so you've embedded a number of comments and questions in there, so I'll break it down a little bit. We have heard dismay from some families, to use your word, and that's true. I'm dismayed as well as a parent of a middle school and high school students who have chosen in-person school. So, we're going to keep plugging along. We make local decisions that are evidence-based, and we have to make those decisions with the use of those local and statewide experts that are here, epidemiologists, virologists, infectious disease pediatricians. We don't make these decisions on our own. So while it's dismaying for some of our families to feel like we've made decisions that have adversely impacted them, we're making them in the best interest of student safety. In terms of protests, when they occur here at the administration building, they are able to be right in front of our building. But when we have them at schools, we're going to have to create spaces where protests can happen, because that's a First Amendment right. We believe in a democratic society, but we have to do them in a way that also does not disrupt the incoming and outgoing of buses and parents and students.
How many online families have requested to switch to in-person learning once the decision was made, and how many have requested to go all online? Will all requests be granted?
So I think it's important to note, first of all, that until today, we were one of 66 school districts that were only virtual.
Kevin.
And that represents more than 200,000 students in the state of Missouri. So now we're going to be entering a hybrid type of operation, right, where elementary are coming back, as well as special education students at middle school and high school will be returning soon. We're working on those plans right now. And that will represent about 30% of the school districts in Missouri are doing, more than 300,000 students. So when you ask, are there families requesting to stay online? There are. Are there some that are asking to come in person? They are, and we're working to honor those requests. Um, so yeah, so that's what we're working on.
All right, and then with all students in classes each of those 4 days, social distancing will likely be a bit difficult. What are some of your biggest class sizes and what other precautions will be taken?
Yeah, so we've put into place if families have an opportunity to remember that we have a plan, and our plan is on our website. And it's about 75 pages long, and in the plan it speaks to our class sizes of trying to maintain that we have 25. So we have a district registrar who says that who is monitoring to make sure that we don't go above that number. And our plan does specify that if our numbers go above and we can't accommodate it at that school, that we would be looking to accommodate families at schools that are contiguous in terms of their attendance area, so a school that's close by. But I do think it's important to note that we're going to be providing face-to-face instruction, and while we try to mitigate that fact that social distancing is not possible, this is our new norm in what we are now doing, and so it is very different from where we left in March.
Understandable. And now if a student were to test positive, would the entire classroom have to be considered a close contact? And what are the district's exact response plans to a positive case?
So in March, that would have been our answer, and in April and in May and in June, our answer would have been if there's a positive case in that classroom, the classroom closes. That isn't the case anymore. What's important is one of our mitigation strategies to have assigned seats. And just like you would on a bus or on an airplane, they would look at who was in the radius right immediately close to that student as a way to identify who would need to quarantine. Is it possible the whole class? Yes, it is possible. I heard you mention Blair Oaks, and that's a reality. But it is possible the whole class. Would it be the whole school? Not necessarily. Although I'll tell you that in Cassville, the high school there has 500 students. And 250 of them, so half of the students, have had to be quarantined. And so we're really talking about something that is unstable when you talk about a global pandemic. And so we'll continue to use our local data, our local experts, and the local decision making of our school board to make the very best decisions.
What is the protocol if a student were to come to school with symptoms of COVID-19?
Yeah, that's a good question, and obviously on the minds of a lot of people. And so it's important to note that we are entering a season, as I heard Kevin saying, of colder weather, and also that brings sniffles and things like that. And so as you might expect, elementary students sniffle a lot and they cough and things like that. So there is an entire protocol that the nurses are using to be able to determine whether or not they suspect that COVID-19 is in play, or whether or not it's just seasonal allergy or seasonal cold or those types of things. But we are going to err on the side of caution. And so it is very possible that a parent may be called to pick up their child to go home because we are just wanting to be really vigilant and very careful about making sure that everybody's safe and healthy.
Completely understood. Now, how many elementary teachers are currently unable to work because they're in quarantine and isolation? And is there any concern right now with staffing levels or availability of substitute teachers?
Right. So we have over 220 subs now. I talked with them last week. And so we have subs who are ready to go. We have about 10 of our teachers right now who are quarantined or are home because of a federal protection called EFMLA. So it's the emergency FMLA that allows a staff member to stay home to take care of their child who might be quarantining and they don't have childcare for that child. And so those are things that we have to be considering. And we should be expecting that we're going to have teachers and staff who are going to be quarantining while students are back in school. And so one of the things that our team has done is to be able to work with that employee to see whether or not the teacher or the staff member is able to still telework back into the building. And so while we may pay for a substitute, because our teachers have experience now doing remote teaching, right, virtual learning, that they'll be able to potentially remote back into their classroom, be supervised by a substitute teacher, but still be able to just keep going in terms of teaching.
Now, student teachers are still not allowed in the buildings, though. Can you explain why that is?
Yes. Well, this is what happened on the beginning of August when we had our beginning and our back to school teacher meetings, our faculty meetings. We had 3 student teachers from one of our local colleges who came, and those 3 knocked out entire grade levels because they tested positive and had been working closely with classroom teachers. So what we've done is we've worked really closely with our partner universities and colleges to find alternative ways for them to be able to meet their needs in terms of their hours of student teaching, as well as, online and virtual learning isn't going anywhere. It will be a part and a product of public schools throughout the nation as we move forward. So they're getting some really valuable skills. And so they're going to be working, and we're relying on them, as you asked in a question earlier in the second segment about, families that are choosing online. We're going to be relying on them to help us meet the needs of students who are converting to an online learning platform.
Now, how was the transition for teachers to prepare for the in-person learning when they just had a week to do it?
Right. I mean, it is true. You had a week to do it. Although, remember, all throughout the summer, we were juggling 3 plans: fully in person, going hybrid, and then fully virtual. And so the school board did a really nice job in July when they decided that we were going to start in virtual to give everybody the opportunity to get that ready. But at that same time, when we were working on establishing the hybrid plan, we gave teachers the opportunity to work in their classrooms to get their classrooms ready for that as well. But it's never enough time. We always need more time. And so a week does seem like a short amount of time. Although our teachers are amazing, our faculties are amazing. We had extra custodial sent from the middle schools and high schools down to elementary to support. And so we'll be ready. It will take some days, no doubt, but we'll be ready.
All right. Thank you so much again for being on with us this morning, Dr. Stiepelman. Have a great first day of school. Back to school.
Yeah, first day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.